Noah focused on the greater wind rune he had obtained from Moxy. Inside his mind space, he was surrounded by all of his runes. He acknowledged their significance, recognizing how far they had brought him. As he reached out toward a lesser wind rune he still possessed, he hesitated, recalling the vision of the man wielding the immense power of the Sunder Master rune. Questions filled his mind. What would happen if he used Sunder on a rune instead of simply breaking it? Would splitting it apart leave behind excess energy he could harness? More importantly, could he even withstand Sunder's power? Determined to find out, Noah reached for the Sunder rune. A dark purple energy began drifting toward him. As it neared his fingertips and flowed into his body, an unbearable pain surged through him, causing him to grit his teeth. The sheer intensity threatened to overwhelm him, but he refused to back down. Straining against the pain, he pushed forward, willing himself to touch the lesser wind rune and sunder it. The moment his finger brushed the rune, a sharp line of purple energy cut cleanly through it, splitting it in half. Releasing the Sunder rune's power, he turned his attention to the lesser wind rune, wondering if it would break into 7 parts. Instead, it simply shattered. He let out a frustrated sigh, so that answered one question. Basic runes couldn't be split apart. However, he suspected he had absorbed a fraction of its energy, and there was far more residual energy left than usual. He could use it to help fill his newly acquired greater wind rune. For the first time, he had harnessed Sunder's power, and it hadn't destroyed him. He was growing stronger at an astonishing rate. Now, with 2 greater wind runes, the catch paper that had once held them burned away. The energy he had absorbed from the lesser wind runes had jump-started his new greater runes, pushing him past the final obstacle standing between him and his goal. His soul was nearly healed. Gripping his flying sword, he acknowledged the reality before him. His runes were upgraded and ready to be filled. He could wield Sunder, even if only briefly. Everything had come together. It was time to reclaim his sanity. As Noah walked outside, he was aware of Lee watching him from a tree. Without hesitation, she jumped down, landing effortlessly. He greeted her, noting her good timing. She tilted her head slightly, questioning if that was really the case. Noah confirmed it, explaining that he had been hoping to speak with her soon. Sensing a shift, Lee asked if something was changing. Noah admitted that it was, but only temporarily. He had a personal project to work on and wasn't sure how long it would take. Until then, he needed her to continue leading the classes in his absence. Lee's sharp eyes studied him as she asked why he was leaving so suddenly. Internally, Noah knew it was because he was done waiting, but he couldn't tell her that. Instead, he dismissed the question, stating that it wasn't important. He reassured her that he wouldn't be disappearing entirely, just around less frequently. If anything went wrong, he told her to find him. Lee squinted at him, then shrugged. If he was sure, she and Moxy could handle class for a while. As Noah turned to leave, Lee suddenly called out, her voice carrying a knowing edge. She had a feeling about what he was trying to do. He glanced back. Was that so? She nodded, but without hesitation, told him she didn't think he could pull it off. Still, she wished him good luck. Later, Noah arrived at the Scorched Acres, launched from the transport cannon. He steeled himself, preparing to face the Hell Reaver. Slowly, he moved toward its location, leaving his flying sword behind as he began gathering the surrounding ash into a sharp projectile. Within the ring of fire, the Hell Reaver remained unaware of his presence. In a sudden burst, the ash projectile shot through the wall of flames, heading straight for its target. The Hell Reaver turned just in time, roaring as it smashed the attack before it could reach him. Noah stepped forward, meeting the creature's glare. He had been expected. It was time to put an end to all of this. The Hell Reaver's response was cold and resolute. There would be no end until Noah's soul shattered for good. Without hesitation, Noah activated his rune. The Hell Reaver roared in response, readying itself for battle. As the battle with the Hell Reaver began, Noah sprinted forward, and the Hell Reaver wasted no time in attacking. It unleashed a massive burst of fire from its mouth, the flames surging toward Noah with devastating force. The impact sent him flying through the air, but he managed to regain his balance, landing firmly on his feet. The Hell Reaver's voice echoed with superiority, taunting him about the vast difference in their power. But Noah stood his ground, acknowledging the disparity before delivering his own retort. The real difference, he declared, was that he only needed to kill the Hell Reaver once. Without hesitation, the Hell Reaver launched another fiery assault. This time, the attack struck Noah directly, consuming him in an instant. His body was completely disintegrated. Noah's mind drifted back, reviewing the grueling ordeal of the past few days. 3 relentless days of battle, 3 days of dying over and over again. Once more, he charged at the Hell Reaver, refusing to yield. As he dashed forward, he unleashed a sharp gust of wind, aiming to divert the creature's focus. The blade of wind slashed across the Hell Reaver's face, forcing it to react. Internally, Noah strategized his next moves, using a wall of ash to block its fire, then disrupting its footing to create an opening. As he shattered the ground beneath the Hell Reaver with his vibration rune, he saw his chance. If he could just reach it this time, he could finally end this battle. Summoning the full force of his vibration rune, Noah surged forward, determined to finish it. But the Hell Reaver, now enraged, made its move before he could strike. With a commanding voice, it declared an end to the fight. Suddenly, the flames that had raged around them began to die out. Noah's body froze mid-motion. Something was wrong. He collapsed to the ground, gasping as an unbearable realization hit him. He couldn't breathe. Panic set in as he struggled for air, his lungs burning, his vision darkening. His thoughts raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. And then the truth dawned on him. The Hell Reaver's master rune had nothing to do with fire at all. It controlled oxygen. The realization came too late. As Noah's body convulsed, his mind faded into unconsciousness. His eyes rolled back, his strength drained away, and eventually he succumbed. Silence fell over the battlefield as the Hell Reaver stood motionless, watching as the damage to Noah's soul deepened. In another section of the scorched acres, Lee sat perched in a tree, watching the battlefield. With a casual tone, she called out to Noah, addressing him with her usual teasing nickname and asking how things were going. Noah, visibly frustrated, shot back, his irritation clear in his voice. Lee, unfazed, pointed out what was obvious. Judging by the fact that he had been doing this nonstop for days, things weren't going well. She reminded him that she couldn't keep coming up with excuses for his students forever. But Noah refused to stop. Not yet. Not when he was this close. Internally, his thoughts raced. The Hell Reaver had some kind of connection to him. He had seen its eye in his soul, its presence lingering in his mind. Maybe it was because of all the times it and its creatures had killed him. He wasn't certain, but what he did know was that it could create visions inside his head. Until he killed it and severed that link, he remained a threat to everyone around him. Lee studied him for a moment before speaking again. There was something off about him, his scent wasn't right. With a concerned edge to her voice, she asked just how many times he had died. Noah snapped back, insisting that he was fine. His frustration boiled over as he accused her of trying to make him say something, like admitting he should stop. Lee smirked, making it clear that stopping wasn't what she had in mind. Watching him die repeatedly was, after all, quite entertaining. But maybe, she suggested, he should at least slow down. She reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder in a rare gesture of comfort. Noah paused at that. Lee continued, her voice more serious now. She admitted that she didn't know exactly how his resurrection worked, but nothing was limitless. And she didn't want him to find out the hard way, especially not while their runes were bound together. Noah exhaled, acknowledging that he hadn't always made the smartest decisions. But he couldn't just sit around. He wouldn't. He was certain that he could get the Hell Reaver this time. Lee wasn't convinced. It felt like the same thing he had been telling himself every time. But Noah was sure. He had learned all of its tricks. Fighting it was no different than fighting the smaller creatures under its command. Lee shook her head. It was completely different. She raised a final concern. What if the Hell Reaver had another trick up its sleeve? Noah didn't hesitate. If that happened, he would die, then try again. The creature could only have so many tricks, and once he had learned them all, it would finally be his turn. Noah sat at his desk, frantically scribbling down ideas, his mind racing for a plan to finally defeat the Hell Reaver. Desperation laced his thoughts as he stared at the scattered scraps of paper before him. This time, it had to work. It had to. The scene shifted to the scorched acres, where Noah soared through the air on his sword, challenging the beast with reckless confidence. But before he could even finish his taunt, a grim realization struck. Too late. The Hell Reaver's massive claw pierced straight through him, impaling him mid-flight. Back in his room, Noah hunched over his desk once more, frustration mounting. He muttered to himself as he wrote, acknowledging his newest problem. His sword was still out there. Again, in the scorched acres, Noah darted through the sky on his blade, goading the monster. This time, he dared it to strike him down with fire. But before he could even complete his sentence, a boulder hurtled toward him, knocking him clean off his sword and sending him crashing down. Back in his room, he cursed under his breath as he returned to scribbling his notes, his mind teetering between determination and madness. Once more, he faced the Hell Reaver. Once more, he barely began his battle cry before death claimed him yet again. The cycle repeated, death after death, each failure etching itself into his soul. With every attempt, he understood more. He was getting closer, closer to victory, but the price was steep. He could feel himself unraveling, his very essence fraying at the edges. Time was running out. He could not afford to keep dying. But that was all he kept doing, dying and dying and dying again. Frustration exploded within him. He screamed, sweeping everything off his desk in a furious outburst. His breath was ragged, his hands trembling. But then, a thought steadied him. There was one thing he had been saving. One thing the Hell Reaver could never be ready for. And this time, it would be enough. Noah approached the Hell Reaver once again, his determination unwavering despite the countless times he had faced death. The Hell Reaver groaned, its voice thick with amusement and curiosity. It marveled at Noah's persistence, questioning just how much of his soul remained intact. Noah dismissed its words with cold resolve, demanding its end. The Hell Reaver roared in response, shaking the battlefield with its fury. Internally, Noah braced himself. This had to be the final fight. It had to be. With swift precision, he activated his Ash rune, launching an attack straight at the beast. The Hell Reaver barely flinched, tearing through the assault like it was nothing. Noah gritted his teeth, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing down on him. His soul was barely hanging on, but he had no choice but to endure. The Hell Reaver stomped the ground with immense force, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Noah reacted quickly, leaping backward just in time to avoid being crushed. Without hesitation, he clenched his hand, activating his wind rune to propel himself into the air. As he ascended, thoughts swirled in his mind. Ever since his arrival in the afterlife, he had clung to his humanity. It was the only thing he had left to call his own. But now, as his soul crumbled piece by piece, that very humanity felt like it was slipping away. Suspended in the air above the Hell Reaver, Noah steadied his breath and focused. He reached deep within himself, drawing upon the power of his Sunder Master rune. The Hell Reaver roared in defiance, locking eyes with him as he began his descent. It was afraid. Noah recognized the shift in its demeanor and pressed forward, hurtling down toward its massive head, his body pulsing with the raw energy of his rune. The moment his finger made contact with the Hell Reaver's skull, the beast hesitated, its voice laced with something it had never felt before, fear. A violent explosion of purple energy erupted from the point of impact. A sharp, glowing line traced down the Hell Reaver's body from its head to its feet. In an instant, The beast was cleaved clean in half, its two halves collapsing apart. Noah exhaled, victorious at last. He finally won. He shouted in triumph, hurling insults at the lifeless remains of his foe. But before he could savor his victory, the massive corpse crashed down on him, crushing him beneath its weight and killing him once again. As darkness enveloped him, he realized the battle had not been in vain. The energy released in that final blow was more than enough to push him to the next rank. Elsewhere, Lee had been watching the entire battle unfold. She could hardly believe what she had witnessed. He had actually done it. He had slain the Hell Reaver. But before she could process it, an unexpected light began to radiate from the remains of the fallen beast. Panic seized her as the glow intensified, shooting skyward. A golden magic circle materialized in the air. Alarmed, Lee dashed toward Noah's crushed body, grabbing something from him before quickly retreating. Suddenly, two figures stepped out from the portal. The younger of the two scanned the battlefield, his voice filled with shock as he questioned what had just transpired. The older man observed the scene carefully, his expression unreadable. Judging by what remained, someone had just killed their Hell Reaver. And if that were true, then it meant one thing: Arbittage was under attack. Nier scoffed as he observed the aftermath of the battle, starting to remark on how the one who had stolen the Master Rune had gotten themselves killed immediately after. Before he could finish, the older man cut him off, correcting him. It wasn't here. Nier narrowed his eyes, piecing it together. The one who had died had not been working alone. There had to be another, someone who had stolen the rune before they arrived. Frustration boiled over as he clenched his fists and cursed, turning sharply on his heel. Without another word, he stepped back through the portal, leaving the older man behind. The elder remained, his gaze fixed on the battlefield as he lifted the Hell Reaver's massive corpse into the air with his magic. His voice was low, thoughtful as he considered the possibilities. An infiltration, or perhaps stolen robes. Fools. Why would anyone dare to attack Arbittage property? This was nothing less than an act of war. He exhaled, then turned his attention to Noah's broken body. With a simple gesture, his magic wrapped around the lifeless form, lifting it effortlessly. Releasing the Hell Reaver's remains back to the ground, he muttered to himself, troublesome indeed. Without another glance at the battlefield, he carried Noah's body and stepped through the portal, vanishing into the unknown. Noah was pulled back by the transport cannon, his mind racing as he sat inside. Lee had been right, he was an idiot. He berated himself for not considering that the Hell Reaver might be defended. Killing it had seemed like the right move, but the school must have brought it here for a reason. His impatience had blinded him to the bigger picture. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a knock on the cannon's door. Opening it, he found Nier standing outside. Nier immediately questioned him about his presence in the scorched acres. Panic flared in Noah's mind. Had they already caught on? Nier introduced himself as an enforcer, making Noah quickly realize that lying outright would be too obvious. He had to be careful with his words. He acknowledged that he had been in the scorched acres and inquired about the reason for Nier's interest. Nier revealed that an attack had been launched against Arbittage, and anyone who was in the area is now a suspect. When Noah asked for details, Nier dismissed his curiosity, but then suddenly grabbed his arm, noticing something unexpected. He demanded to know why no one had informed him that Noah was rank 1 and questioned whether he had stolen someone's clothes. Before Noah could respond, another voice cut in, Tim, who vouched for him. Tim explained that Noah was a regular customer, frequently visiting the scorched acres to train. He even mentioned that Noah was a professor and was well-liked by his students. Nier sneered at the idea of a rank 1 professor and mockingly asked how he even managed to teach his students. Noah started to respond, but Nier cut him off, stating that the Hell Reaver could have easily crushed a rank 1. However, he didn't completely dismiss the possibility that Noah had helped someone else kill it. He warned Noah not to leave Arbittage grounds. Fleeing would be seen as an admission of guilt. He concluded by saying they would deal with him further once the investigator arrived. With no other choice, Noah nodded. Later, Noah jumped onto his bed in frustration. He cursed his own foolishness, only to hear Lee's voice respond. She playfully remarked that if he wanted someone to insult him, he could have just asked. Noah immediately asked if she had seen what had happened. Lee sarcastically asked whether he meant the part where he got crushed or the part where he triggered a massive alarm. Noah groaned, realizing how dire his situation was. They were going to find his corpse. Lee, however, revealed that they already had. It had been burned beyond recognition. Noah panicked at the realization that his name tag had been on the body, but Lee casually produced it, showing that she had retrieved it. Stunned, he asked how she had managed it, but she simply replied that she had her ways. She explained that they wouldn't be able to identify his body, but they knew the master rune was missing. The prevailing theory was that a large group had worked together to take down the monster. Noah sighed, recognizing that he had thrown himself into a hornet's nest and then shaken it for good measure. Lee seemed amused, agreeing that it would certainly be entertaining. She then asked whether he had at least managed to obtain the master rune. Noah admitted that he hadn't even checked yet. After all the trouble he had gone through, he could only hope that the Hell Reaver had given him something worthwhile. Inside his mind space, he observed his runes. His vibration runes were completely filled. The Hell Reaver had certainly provided him with an enormous amount of energy. However, the real prize awaited him. He looked up and saw it, a second master rune beside his Sunder rune. A satisfied smile spread across his face. He had done it. Back outside, Noah warned Lee to step back, uncertain of what would happen when he tested the new rune. Drawing on its power, he expected something spectacular. Instead, all that emerged was a small poof. Lee responded with sarcastic awe, and Noah played along. He quickly realized that it wasn't a fire-based master rune. Instead, he theorized that it made oxygen hyperreactive. It was probably a good thing he didn't know enough physics to fully comprehend why that might be problematic. He mused about master runes having passive effects and wondered what combustion's passive ability might be. Before he could think further, he suddenly found himself gasping for air. A wave of panic struck as he clutched his bedsheets, collapsing to the floor in desperate need of oxygen. Lee, also struggling for breath, demanded to know what he had just done. Noah coughed out an explanation. He had made the oxygen in the air completely inert. That was going to take some getting used to. He then speculated that the Hell Reaver must have been holding its breath while fighting. Before he could finish, Lee hushed him. Someone was coming. A knock sounded at the door. The voice on the other side was urgent, calling for him to open up. Noah immediately recognized it. It was the guy from his first day here. He had mentioned leaving for a few months. Now he was back. The voice demanded entry, stating that this was official Linwick business. Noah hesitated briefly before opening the door, allowing Braden inside. Braden started to speak but abruptly stopped, looking at Lee with visible disgust. He immediately assumed she was another student, but Noah quickly denied it, stating that she was a teacher. Sarcastically, Braden played along, pretending to believe him. When Noah affirmed it again, Braden finally accepted it with a begrudging nod and told Lee to leave. As she made her exit, she mockingly addressed Noah as Professor. Braden smirked in response before the door slammed shut behind her. Now alone with Noah, Braden activated his magic, engulfing the entire room in its power. He explained that it wasn't like anyone would bother spying on Noah, but their father was paranoid. Noah acknowledged it and asked what this official business was about. Braden remarked on how cautious Noah was, more than usual. Then he finally dropped the bombshell. The family was starting to ask questions. Noah had a job to do, so why, Braden demanded, wasn't he dead yet? Noah struggled to process Braden's words, his mind racing. Braden stood before him, waiting expectantly before finally speaking again, reminding Noah that he was there to help. Noah scoffed at the notion, questioning whether Braden was really there to help or simply ensuring his demise. He tried to dismiss him, claiming he had been working, but Braden was quick to criticize, saying Noah had been focusing on the wrong thing. Braden pressed further, stating that their father wanted to know the reason for the delay. They had a schedule to keep, and Noah had claimed he could handle this. Now, Braden needed reassurance that he still could. Noah's thoughts spiraled. Just who was Vermil? He couldn't afford to get caught up in this now. Outwardly, he feigned ignorance, insisting he had no idea what Braden was talking about and pointedly gesturing toward the door. Braden was growing frustrated, exasperated by Noah's vague responses. He accused Noah of being too dedicated to their cause, to the point of creepiness, and demanded to know why he couldn't just trust him. Internally, Noah reasoned that if he continued speaking in cryptic phrases, it might be enough to keep up the charade. He needed to buy himself time. Braden, however, wasn't letting up. He demanded to know if everything was progressing as planned, emphasizing that their father would not tolerate unexplained delays. He even mentioned the runes Noah had requested, his tone growing more impatient. Noah decided to tell Braden exactly what he wanted to hear. He assured him that everything was going great. Braden visibly relaxed, admitting that he had been worried when he heard Noah was still alive. He explained that the Hellreaver's death made sense, which was why he had returned. But when he learned that Noah was still walking around and even suspected of involvement, he had nearly blown his cover. Noah remained composed, giving a simple acknowledgement in response. Braden prepared to leave, reminding Noah that he didn't want to arouse suspicion. As he deactivated his magic and opened the door, he casually suggested they grab drinks tomorrow, only to stop mid-sentence. Standing right outside Noah's door was Moxy. The two locked eyes, instantly recognizing each other as enemies. Tension thickened as they both prepared to fight. Before they could clash, Noah rushed out, demanding to know what was happening. Braden pointed at Moxy, accusing her of being a Tauren and claiming she was there to interfere. Moxy shot back, asking what exactly she was supposed to be interfering with. Noah studied Braden closely, realizing that if he had been assigned any task related to Vermil, he would have blown his cover within minutes. Attempting to de-escalate the situation, Noah tried to redirect the conversation, but before he could finish speaking, Braden placed a hand on his shoulder. He assured Noah that it was fine and that he would leave. Before departing, he whispered a warning, urging Noah not to trust Moxy, no matter what she said. As he walked away, he and Moxy exchanged one last glance. Once Braden was gone, Moxy turned to Noah, exasperated. She questioned what kind of mess he had gotten himself wrapped up in. After Noah explained the situation, Moxy let out a sigh, realizing why Lee had sent her there. But before she could process it all, Noah hesitated. He knew that what he was about to say would test his trust in Moxy. If this was a mistake, it would be a costly one. Noah took a breath and asked if she had heard about the Hellreaver's death. Moxy confirmed that she had. Then, without hesitation, Noah reached out and placed a hand on hers, looking her in the eye. He confessed that he had been the one to kill the Hellreaver. Moxy was stunned, struggling to process the revelation. She asked how he had done it, and Noah simply replied that it had been sheer dumb perseverance with a little bit of cheating. Moxy was momentarily speechless, admitting she hadn't expected that. She then questioned whether Braden or whoever he really was knew. She pointed out that the Linwicks had provided the Hellreaver to the school, making the situation even more precarious. Noah reassured her that he didn't think Braden suspected a thing. Taking a deep drink from her cup, Moxy finally responded with a mixture of amusement and dread. She found the situation both terrifying and hilarious, but she made it clear that Noah was in deep trouble. Before she forgot, she placed a book on the table in front of him, the one he had asked for. She remarked on how fortunate he was that the Taurens kept thorough records of their enemies. However, before handing it over, she demanded an answer to a question. She asked if he had the Master Rune. Noah only reiterated that he had killed the Hellreaver. Moxy exhaled. Admitting she was jealous of his feat, she insisted he show her the rune later, but made it clear she didn't want to know more for now, considering the investigation. Finally, she handed him the book. Noah took it with gratitude, but Moxy wasn't done. She warned him to be careful and not to die before figuring out why the Linwicks wanted him dead. She was too invested in the mystery now to see it end prematurely. Noah gave her a dry response, but she was serious. She didn't want to be left in the dark anymore. She wanted to help, especially if it meant taking down the Linwicks. That led Noah to another question. He asked why Braden had recognized her. Moxy paused before answering, noting that it had been the biggest giveaway that Noah wasn't really Vermil since his whole boat analogy. The Linwicks and the Taurens had been at war for years, and while no direct battles had occurred since the treaty 5 years ago, their hatred for one another had never faded. Anyone of importance in either family would instantly recognize a member of the other. Yet, Noah pointed out that she hadn't immediately recognized Braden. Moxy admitted that she wasn't a very good Tauren. There was a reason she was teaching instead of enjoying the privileges of her family's position. As she turned to leave, she urged Noah to read quickly. Arbitage wouldn't wait around if they suspected him, and neither would his family. Later, Noah sat down with the book, flipping through its pages. It was painfully dull, a long list of names and relations with no details about the runes family members used. He knew he shouldn't be surprised, considering how fiercely guarded that information was. As he examined Vermil's listed family members, he couldn't help but note the oddities. A father simply named Father with no ties to the family's main branch. A mother who had conveniently been erased from the records. A sister who appeared normal, suspiciously so. And a set of twins who looked nothing alike. Sarcasm laced his thoughts as he mused that everything made perfect sense. He let out a long sigh, realizing this wouldn't do. He needed more information. He would have to take matters into his own hands. Rising from his seat, he walked over to a cupboard filled with alcohol. As he opened it and examined the bottles, he smirked to himself. He hoped Braden was thirsty. The scene shifted, revealing Noah and Braden raising their glasses in a toast. Braden's voice carried an air of camaraderie as they drank together. He complimented the alcohol, nodding approvingly. Noah, slightly less enthusiastic, agreed with a quiet acknowledgement. Braden leaned back, taking in the moment. He reflected on how long it had been since they had done something like this as brothers. Noah agreed, admitting it had been too long. There was a tinge of regret in Braden's voice as he lamented the fact that their meetings always revolved around business. But Noah, ever pragmatic, pointed out that it was better than not seeing each other at all. At the very least, he was glad Braden's work was treating him better than his own. Braden sighed, mentioning the loss of the Hell Reaver. Though it was unfortunate, he was confident a replacement could be found within a few months. In a twisted way, he almost felt grateful to whoever had killed it. After all, their actions had given him the chance to share this drink with Noah. He raised his glass once more in celebration. Noah watched as Braden drank with alarming ease, making it difficult for Noah to keep up. Worse, he knew he couldn't pretend to drink. Braden was too perceptive. Despite his carefree demeanor, his sharp eyes would catch any discrepancy. So Noah had no choice but to keep pace, forcing himself to swallow drink after drink. Braden, unfazed by the growing intoxication, reassured Noah that there was no need to worry. By the time anything significant happened, the consequences wouldn't be his concern. Noah acknowledged this, though a lingering curiosity remained in his mind. Braden chuckled, remarking that Vermil had always been the curious type. The two continued drinking, their glasses clinking together in another toast. As the alcohol flowed, Braden admitted something. He never had the same drive as Vermil. Getting stronger was great, but he couldn't understand how Vermil wasn't even a little scared. Noah, deep in thought, found himself questioning Braden's words. Vermil? Stronger? In truth, Vermil had been the weakest professor at the academy. Still, he responded simply, never denying that fear was present. They drank again, and as the night wore on, Braden erupted into laughter. He had just learned that Noah had once punched Edward, and he couldn't stop himself from howling at the thought. Wishing he had been there to see it firsthand, he doubled over with amusement. Noah, unbothered, merely stated that Edward had deserved it. They toasted again, but as Noah downed another drink, he struggled to keep pace. His mind raced, how much could Braden drink? He still wasn't drunk enough, and Noah knew he had to keep going. As time passed, Braden became more playful, now toying with his magic. He juggled 3 glowing magical orbs in the air, watching them dance between his fingers. A mischievous grin spread across his face as he wondered aloud if he could add a 4th. Noah, caught up in the moment, urged him on excitedly, encouraging him to go for it. Eventually, the alcohol caught up to them both. Braden ended up on the floor, while Noah, barely holding on, sat slumped in his chair. Braden muttered a crude remark about their father before lifting his glass for yet another toast. He mused aloud about Noah's confidence, admitting that he wouldn't have the courage to handle what his brother did. Though he meant no offense, he was glad it was Noah and not himself. He looked forward to the day when Noah would rejoin them, leaving his meaningless teaching job behind. Noah, drowning in alcohol and conflicting thoughts, internally questioned how a dead man was supposed to rejoin anything. His stomach churned, and he realized he was about to be sick. Stumbling forward, he excused himself, heading for the bathroom. Braden called after him, mocking his tolerance. Noah, despite his state, insisted he wouldn't pass out. Inside the bathroom, Lee was already waiting for him. She expressed her impatience, saying she was hungry. Noah, barely able to stand straight, hushed her and insisted they needed to be quick. His vision blurred, and he saw multiple versions of Lee before him. He slurred his words, asking if she had the knife. She held it up, confirming she was ready. Noah, still dazed, tried to recall whose idea this had been. Lee reminded him that it was his own plan. Accepting that, he mumbled that they should proceed before he sobered up enough to reconsider. She assured him she would be there, waiting for his return. Without hesitation, Noah stabbed himself with the knife, ending his own life. Moments later, he emerged from the bathroom, revived but disoriented. The fog in his mind lingered from the brief experience of death, but at least the alcohol was gone. Now he could think clearly again. Braden looked up from his drink, having heard something. He asked if everything was all right, mentioning that he thought he had heard a scream. Noah quickly reassured him that everything was fine. Internally, he took stock of his situation. His mind was still recovering, but now was the perfect time to gather information. Shifting the conversation, Noah admitted that things were difficult for him too. Braden was surprised, finding it hard to believe. Noah explained that he simply tried not to show it. It didn't feel right to. Braden nodded in understanding, acknowledging that their father would never have approved. He had always assumed Vermil was completely self-assured. Noah reflected on the nature of confidence. It was easy when there were no consequences to one's actions. Perhaps he hadn't fully grasped that before. In reality, he had just been running forward blindly, hoping the path would form in front of him. Braden admitted he had never realized Vermil felt that way. He expressed regret that he had not been much of a brother, just their father's sword. Noah dismissed it, reminding him that they all had roles to play. Braden scoffed at that, pointing out that Vermil was the only one who ever broke his role just to treat him kindly. Meanwhile, all Braden ever did was show up to deliver Vermil's next job. He took another swig of alcohol, questioning what kind of family they were. They were supposed to be improving the world, yet here he was, treating his own brother like scum. Still, he reassured him that he wouldn't tell their father that the delay was due to nerves, if that was what he was worried about. Noah, without hesitation, said he knew Braden wouldn't betray him like that. Braden looked away, emotion welling up in his eyes. He muttered a quiet never before asking for another bottle. As they continued drinking, Braden asked what he planned to do. If things weren't finished soon, their father would force him to return everything and find a replacement. Noah questioned whether anyone else could even do what he had been assigned to do. Braden smirked, reminding him that he got the job because no one else was crazy enough to take it. Despite everything, Braden admitted that knowing Vermil had struggles of his own made him admire him even more. Noah took that in before subtly shifting the topic. He asked if their father would care much about the delays. Braden hesitated before answering. After working toward the summoning for so long, They were all just hoping Vermil would return in time. Noah latched onto that statement. A summoning? And a return for what? Dead men didn't usually make scheduled appearances. Playing along, Noah agreed, saying he wouldn't want to be late. Braden chuckled bitterly. Their father wouldn't want that either. Everything was about his election. He claimed it was about family, but Braden wasn't convinced. Noah absorbed this new piece of information. An election? He pressed Braden to elaborate. Braden scoffed at their father's obsession with joining the main family branch. He sent one son to his death and another to work as a spy. Frustration boiled over as Braden declared that he was a terrible spy. Everyone knew he was one, which, of course, defeated the purpose. Braden, exhausted, slumped to the ground. Noah, watching his brother, couldn't bring himself to place any blame. Their father was only trying to improve life for both of them, or at least he hoped that was the case. Getting into the main branch was clearly important, and despite Braden's anger over Vermil's role, he still respected their father enough to care. Braden, still sprawled on the floor, admitted his fears. No one had ever pulled off something like this successfully before. If something went wrong, Vermil could end up dead for real instead of just going into hiding. Noah froze at the word. Hiding? The thought trailed in his mind until realization struck him hard. Of course, he had misunderstood everything. Vermil was never actually supposed to die, he was supposed to fake his death. But then Braden kept talking. What if the part after the summoning failed? What if something went wrong? Killing oneself wasn't as easy as people thought. Noah's head spun. Had Vermil been meant to die or not? He cursed himself for letting Braden drink this much. Now, he couldn't tell if Braden was just rambling nonsense or revealing crucial details. Braden suddenly shifted, shaking his head as if trying to convince himself. He told Noah that he was right. They should be more confident that everything would work out fine. Slowly, he pushed himself off the ground. Noah, still caught in the whirlwind of conflicting information, could only offer a vague response, agreeing hesitantly. Braden smirked, seeing through him. Even if Vermil was afraid, he was the one offering comfort. With a teasing lilt, he suggested that if Vermil treated other people like this more often, they might actually like him. Noah started to say something, but Braden cut him off. He pointed out the irony in their conversations. Both of them called his demeanor an act, but when he was like this almost all the time, was it really an act? He admitted that it had been a long time since he had seen this side of Vermil, since they were kids even, and for once it was nice. Noah sat in silence for a long moment before finally speaking. He apologized. Braden sighed, nodding slightly. He understood. It wasn't easy. Vermil had to keep people at a distance. He just wished it didn't have to be that way, but it did. With that, Braden stretched out on the floor, exhaustion finally overtaking him. His voice was quieter now, his words slipping into a drowsy mumble. Any connections Vermil had could be influenced by the demon. Then, just as easily as he had spoken, Braden yawned, asking if he minded him sleeping there. He was sure he didn't. With a tired exhale, he thanked him for the drinks before closing his eyes. Noah barely heard the last part. His mind had locked onto one thing. Demon. His eyes widened in shock. Did Braden just say, demon? Noah's mind raced as he pieced together the implications of what he had learned. Vermil had been summoning a demon? Was the plan just to use it to influence the main house election? No, that couldn't be the only motive. There had to be more to it. If Braden was telling the truth, then Vermil had either been meant to fake his death or actually die during the summoning. Noah wasn't sure which Braden had meant. But if that was the case, then maybe that was why his soul had ended up in Vermil's body. Perhaps summoning a demon left someone open to possession, or something like that. He wondered if Vermil had been in the scorched acres for the summoning. It was a secluded place, after all. Until now, he had been assuming that Vermil had failed. But what if he had succeeded? That would mean the demon could still be in the scorched acres. Or worse, it could be in Arbitage. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted when Lee suddenly appeared, greeting him casually and pulling him out of his contemplation. Without hesitation, she asked how his conversation with Braden had gone, admitting that she had listened in for a while but had gotten bored. Noah replied that it had answered some questions but had also created many more. Without waiting for a response, he suggested they walk. As they made their way toward the garden, Noah spoke again, this time making a statement. Lee wasn't a face stealer. Lee reacted with confusion at first. Noah pressed further, asking if he was wrong. She admitted he wasn't. Noah demanded to know why she had lied. Lee's response was simple. Why wouldn't she? She wasn't a face stealer. She was a demon. Noah froze at those words. The revelation didn't make sense to him. Why pretend to be a face stealer? Why not just tell the truth? He was about to say it out loud when he caught himself. Internally, he realized something. He wouldn't have known the difference. And, more importantly, he wouldn't have cared. Still, he pressed on, pointing out that Lee had already known the answers to half the questions he had asked Braden. She admitted that she did. Frustrated, Noah asked why keep it from him? Lee's expression darkened as she responded, her voice heavy with something deeper than mere deception. She asked if he had any idea what it was like. Sitting around in the damned plains for years on end, fighting to survive with no one to talk to, no friends, no enemies, just hunger. Noah didn't answer out loud, but internally he understood more than she might have expected. He had a better idea than he let on. Memories of his time in the afterlife flickered through his mind. Lee's voice carried a raw intensity as she spoke. She had finally gotten the chance to exist in the human world, to survive without having to rip that chance from someone else. Of course, she had taken it. And of course, she had lied about it. She continued, her tone bitter. The Inquisitors were known for what they did to demons. Even in the damned plains, stories of their actions reached the lost souls trapped there. Now, she supposed she would find out firsthand. Noah turned to face her, his expression unreadable as he asked if she really thought he would try to get rid of her. Lee scoffed, dismissing the idea. He wasn't Vermil. She had played along, but she had noticed the way he questioned Braden about things Vermil had already done. She had watched him do them. Internally, Noah acknowledged it as yet another secret exposed. Lee pressed on, pointing out that only a truly powerful mage could crush a soul. On top of that, he had the ability to return to life after death, an ability she had only ever seen in a handful of archdemons. And even they didn't do it with the same casual disregard that he did. More importantly, he wasn't a demon. He didn't smell like one. Someone like him, with his nature, likely wouldn't have tolerated having a demon around. Noah seized on that contradiction, questioning why she had reached out to him at all. She had copied his body, approached Todd, and stayed close to him, all while assuming he might kill her. Lee's voice rose with frustration as she explained. She had been trapped in the Scorched Acres. Vermil's summoning portal had bound her there, forcing her to stay unless she received permission to leave. Something clicked in Noah's mind. He recalled the exact wording of Lee's rune oath. She had sworn on her runes to the original owner of his body that they would work together until they reached an agreement to break the oath. During that time, she had vowed to act in both of their interests in exchange for his aid in gathering runes. One phrase stood out to him: the original owner of this body. Realization hit him, and he voiced his suspicion. She had never actually made a rune oath with him at all. Lee confirmed it without hesitation. Vermil's contract required her to get his permission to leave the Scorched Acres, but it never specified whose soul had to be operating his body. It was a nitpicky detail, but enough to create a loophole. Noah narrowed his eyes, asking the question that now hung between them. If she was free, why had she stuck around? Lee's answer came without hesitation. Because she was lonely. She had waited for this moment for most of her life. But when she finally arrived, she didn't know where to go or what to do. She hadn't planned to stay. But then she had met him. Met his students. They had spent time with her, trusted her, and it had been fun. Of course, she had lied about what she was. She hadn't wanted to be alone anymore. and she still didn't. Noah considered the implications of what Lee had just revealed. If she had never truly been bound by the oath, that meant she was free to act on her own. He asked her to confirm it. She wasn't bound by the oath at all, was she? Lee admitted that she wasn't. She had deliberately specified Vermil's original body in order to avoid being forced to fulfill the oath. She started to ask him something, but Noah cut her off before she could finish. There was no need. She had given him no reason not to trust her. Lee seemed surprised. He was really going to trust a demon? Noah countered immediately. She had been trusting a body-stealing idiot all this time. Lee acknowledged that with a simple agreement, but Noah had one more question. Why had Vermil summoned her? What had he wanted her to do about the election? Lee corrected him. Vermil hadn't been summoning her. He had been summoning a different demon. She had just managed to slip through in the process. Noah stopped walking. That changed everything. His voice was sharp as he demanded to know what had happened with the other demon. Lee admitted she had no idea. She had run away as soon as she sensed it. It was far too powerful. Frustration spiked in Noah's voice as he processed what that meant. That meant there was another demon running around. Powerful one. One that Vermil had specifically summoned to alter his family's social standing. Lee confirmed it casually. Noah groaned. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It was a massive problem. Lee, however, didn't seem too concerned. The demon was still stuck in the scorched acres, after all. Noah wasn't convinced. It had been a lot stronger than Lee, hadn't it? She admitted it was. And she had never actually seen it in the scorched acres? She hesitated before answering. No, she hadn't. And she had found a way out of Vermil's contract? She had. Noah pressed the point. If she had managed to escape, then what was stopping the other demon from doing the same? Realization dawned on Lee's face. She finally saw the problem. Noah confirmed it grimly. Still, Lee tried to brush it off. The demon hadn't attacked yet. Maybe it was off killing and terrorizing people somewhere else. In that case, it wasn't their problem. Noah's sarcasm was thick as he responded. Lovely. Internally, he couldn't help but acknowledge how catastrophic Vermil's summoning had been. He had failed to bind his intended target, had accidentally released another demon into the world, and had managed to crush his own soul in the process. That was a triple failure. Impressive, in a way. Lee's tone softened as she apologized. She should have told him earlier. Noah shook his head. He didn't blame her. It wouldn't have changed anything. And, if he were in her position, he would have done the same. Still, Lee insisted that the demon wasn't really their problem. They didn't have to deal with it. Maybe not, but Noah knew it was close to Arbitage. That meant his students were in danger. If he reported it, no one would believe him. Or worse, they would question him about it. That might actually be more dangerous. After all, he was still a suspect in the Hellreaver incident. Lee pointed out that he had done the whole Hellreaver thing. Noah didn't argue. Suspects could be guilty. But, for now, the demon had to be set aside. He had a different idea. The scene shifted. Moxy stood at her door, her hair a mess, exhaustion written all over her face. Annoyance laced her voice as she questioned why someone was knocking at this hour. She reminded Noah that he was under active investigation and shouldn't be drawing attention to himself. Noah's voice responded, calm and measured. He acknowledged her concern, making it clear that he was fully aware of his situation. But that wasn't why he was here. His next words carried an unmistakable note of intent as he asked if she was interested in taking a little field trip.